Hey guys, it's Caitlin the dietitian. With lots of nutrition information available online, it can be a little bit confusing to know what you should and shouldn't eat as an athlete. So, today I wanted to go through a little bit of a guide on what it actually looks like to eat as a high performing athlete. So, when people think about high performance nutrition, they will often automatically think about things like long lists of supplements, rigid, strict meal plans, or cutting out any of the fun food. But if you look at this diagram down the bottom, we can see that there's a lot more to it, that supplements don't even come until the very end once that foundation in your nutrition has started. So, yes, as an athlete, you want to be intentional and mindful with your nutrition, but it's not about doing anything extreme. Okay, the main thing we want to focus on is setting those good foundations and being consistent with the fundamentals of performance nutrition. That's what's going to be the most impactful as an athlete. So, over the next few slides, I'm going to break down a few really important considerations or things to keep in mind to make sure that your nutrition is optimizing your performance as much as it can. So, the first thing that we focus on when it comes to performance nutrition is really setting those foundations. So, making sure that you're eating balanced meals at all of your main meals. So, what that looks like is making sure you've got a really good source of complex carbohydrates, lean protein, and plenty of color. So, the reason we want to focus on this is as an athlete, you have higher energy and macronutrient requirements. So, making sure your meals are balanced in this way will get you closer to hitting these requirements. Plus, it's going to help optimize your diet quality through those extra micronutrients in your fruits and veggies, which will support things like recovery, adaptations to your training, and long term health. Okay, so once we have your main meals sorted and balanced, we would then look at focusing on your meal and snack timing. So, when you're eating across the day and around exercise, is super important to optimize things like energy levels, appetite, and recovery. So, if we take a closer look into that, we firstly want to make sure you're eating regularly across the day. So, that's going to help support steady energy across the day. So, whether it's close to exercise or away from exercise, we want to make sure your energy levels are steady throughout the day, and that's also going to support appetite. So, making sure we don't have long gaps between meals or snacks because that's when either energy can drop and appetite can increase. We then want to make sure that we're fueling or eating properly at the correct times around training. So, making sure that we're eating within 1 to 2 hours before exercise, prioritizing carbohydrates, so whether that's a meal or a snack. And then after exercise, we want to make sure that we're eating within 1 hour, again, whether that's a meal or a snack, and making sure it contains carbohydrates and protein to support that recovery process. For athletes that are exercising for 60 minutes or more and it's at moderate to high intensity, we would then make sure that we're eating throughout the session to continue to top up those energy stores. Once we have set your balanced meals and your meal and snack timing, the next step we can look at for high performance nutrition is making sure we're matching our intake according to our activity level. So, not every day as an athlete will look the same. Some days you'll have higher training loads, some days you'll have lower training loads. And so, it's important to make sure we're adjusting our nutrition according to that. So, for example, carbohydrates, because that's our source of energy, that can be increased on those bigger activity days. Whereas on our lower activity days, that's when we would prioritize more fiber dense foods, so our fruits and our veggies, to get in those micronutrients and fiber. And then across the different days, protein can stay relatively consistent. So if we look at this diagram on the right, on a lower activity day, a quarter of our plate would be carbohydrates, half of our plate would be color. Then, as we start to increase our activity, carbohydrates will start to be a bigger portion on our plate and color will slightly reduce, again, with protein staying relatively consistent. Now, this is just an example. Obviously, as an individual athlete, your requirements will be specific to you, but this is just kind of a general rule. So, another aspect of high performance nutrition is being prepared. So, as an athlete, having a consistent intake is super, super important to make sure that you're hitting all your requirements and you're optimizing your performance and health. So we want to make sure that we're planning and preparing ahead to reduce any risk of missing fuel or having long gaps between meals and snacks. So we want to make sure that we're preparing ahead. So maybe we're planning out our days and what our training schedule looks like, whether we're training or it's a rest day, to make sure we're having that regular meals and snacks across the day, particularly if your schedule is quite busy. And then we also want to make sure we have kind of backup meals or snacks either on hand or at home, just to account for anything that comes up to make sure that we're not missing those fueling opportunities. Okay, so the final part to our high performance nutrition is now looking at supplements. So once we've got our foundation set and you're being really consistent with your nutrition, we can then look at supplements. Now, notice this says optional. This is something that isn't necessary but can definitely be considered once those foundations are set to optimize your performance even more. We do want to make sure that if you are considering supplements, that you are at an appropriate age to be taking supplements and your training demands they do call for supplements. And it's really important that you're discussing with a sports dietitian to discuss if this is necessary for you. If so, what supplements would be effective for your sport? How should you be taking them? And making sure that they are safe. So are they batch tested and HASTO approved? Okay, so to kind of put everything together, I wanted to show a quick example to see what this actually looks like in real life. So on the next page, we're going to look at Sally's nutrition for a training day. So what she would usually have, she goes straight from uni to training in the afternoon. She lives a 60-minute drive from training. So after training, it takes her about an hour to get home. And she has reported that she's been losing energy in training and often remains sore a few days after. So we're going to look at kind of a before and after of her nutrition for a training day. So this is her before nutrition. So for brekkie, she's having avo toast. For morning tea, she's having a piece of fruit and some nuts. For lunch, she has a pasta salad with chicken, not having an afternoon tea because she's going straight from uni to training, so she hasn't had enough time. And then when she gets home, she's having her dinner, which is salmon with couscous and broccoli. So now we're going to look at some tweaks we can make to make it more of a high performance nutrition plate. So starting off with brekkie, remember we want to make sure that you are eating balanced meals. So while before Sally was having carbohydrates with the bread, she was having colour with the avocado, this meal was missing protein. So as an athlete, we want to make sure you're hitting your daily protein goals. So it's really important that you're having this spread throughout the day. So we could add some eggs onto that. Morning tea was pretty good, so we kept that the same. Lunch again was pretty good. That was a balanced meal with protein, carbs, and colour. A big area that we could look at is that timing of snacks around her training. So making sure she's having carbohydrates 1 to 2 hours before her exercise. So choosing a muesli bar and a banana because it's going to give her plenty of carbohydrates and pretty easy for her to pack in her bag to go straight to training from uni. And then post-training, because let's say it takes her 60 minutes to get home from training, but then she might need to have a shower, make dinner. She's then not eating within an hour after exercise. So we threw in an Up and Go Energize to give her some carbohydrates and protein to start that recovery process post-training to tie her over until she gets her dinner. So just a few minor tweaks. Her baseline nutrition previously was pretty good, but to optimize that even more for a high-performing athlete, there were a few tweaks that we had to make. Okay, so the key takeaways from our presentation today is that high performance nutrition isn't about being perfect or doing the extremes. It's about doing your fundamentals consistently. So focus on building balanced meals, your meal and snack timing across the day and around exercise, altering your nutrition to your training load, being prepared and planning ahead, and then understanding what supplements to use if you choose to use them and if those foundations are in place. So, consistency with these things are going to help you perform better, recover quicker, and support your long term development as an athlete. Okay, so I hope you were able to get a few different nutrition tips from our presentation today. If you were looking to personalize your nutrition a little bit more, you can use the code on the screen to receive 20% off your initial dietitian appointments. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the presentation and I will see you in our next one.